The Sweep Spot is a member of the Mice Chat Podcast Network. MicePod.com. Now, the magical kingdom in a mixed up world.
You're in the sweet spot, baby. You're in the sweet spot, girl. You're in the sweet spot, darling. It's a magical kingdom in a mixed up world. You're in the sweet spot, baby. You're in the sweet spot, girl. You're in the sweet spot, darling. It's a magical kingdom in a mixed up world. You're in the sweet spot, baby. You're in the sweet spot, girl. You're in the sweet spot, darling. It's a magical kingdom in a mixed up world. It's a magical kingdom in a mixed up world. It's a magical kingdom in a mixed up world.
Welcome to the Sweep Spot Podcast. My name is Lynn, your host, and Ken's my co-host. How's it going, Ken?
Hey, Lynn. Well, it's going, except I'm still a little under the weather here. I've been so for almost a week. So if I sound a little different tonight, folks, that's why. Just trying not to cough and hack into the microphone and all that. So I'm sure a lot of you have been going through the same thing lately.
Yeah.
So, but I'm looking forward to the show, though. We've got a lot to talk about.
Yeah, it's going to be fun, and it's actually episode 204. So
Wait a second. Oh, cough and hack. 204 episodes.
yeah.
Well,
right.
you don't say. I guess I
just
shouldn't be
said it,
surprised. I mean, the last one was 203, right?
yeah. Right.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah, I'm looking forward to this episode. We're going to have a special guest on our show, and we're going to talk a lot about Pirates of the Caribbean. Attraction, not the movie. So, it should be a lot of fun. A few things here, in case you're wondering, who are these jokers? We are two former Disneyland custodial cast members, and we talk about Disneyland. Talk about current events, talk about history, pretty much everything Disneyland. So we also are authors of a book called Cleaning the Kingdom, and it's all about our experiences working at Disneyland for over combined of 15 years. So check that out, and you can get that at our website. And show notes and all the info on our show at www.thesweepspot.com. That's sweepspot.com. And also, just want to keep reminding people, we're going to be at the D23 Expo in July. And I believe it's the 14th, 15th, 16th of July. And that's at the Anaheim Convention Center. And you can get tickets, I believe, through the D23 website, d23.com. And we will be there selling our book. We will be there probably do some live recordings for the show. We'll just have a lot of fun. We're going to be sharing a booth again with Russell Flores, our good friend.
Yeah.
And
It's going to be a lot of fun. I think people should come by and say hi to us, point and laugh.
Whatever you want to do.
Yeah, offer us gifts, that sort of thing. I don't know.
Yeah, it'll be fun. I'm really looking forward to it. Always looking forward to meeting listeners, and we'll have a special gift for you, a small token of appreciation for people that come up and say they listen to our show. And we may even have like a special code word. We'll see as we get closer. So I think that'll do it, because I think we have a packed show here and we need to get going on it. But let's get right into the current events. Now we're going to have the current events. What's going on, Ken?
Well, Lynn, more hotel rooms for the Anaheim Resort District. That's what's going on.
All right.
And according to the Orange County Register, 3 more hotel projects planned around Disneyland in Anaheim's resort area. And they start off by saying, with Star Wars Land under construction at nearby Disneyland and the Anaheim Convention Center expansion nearly complete, Bobby Bagat decided now was the time to redevelop his aging Arena Inn and Suites. And here's a quote from him. Even he says, "It was an eyesore to the city. It was run down," said Bagat, who purchased the 2.06 acres property at Harbor Boulevard and Catella Avenue in 2007. So that's 10 years ago. The previous owner owned it for 30 years, made no upgrades. My whole plan when I bought it was to redevelop it, but the recession hit, so my plan hit a snag. But things have gotten better, he said. So it says Bagat, 37, so he was 27 when he bought the property.
Wow.
President of the Arena Group, struck a deal with Prospera Hotels, the developer of the resort district's Hyatt Place, Homewood Suites, and Hyatt House. So they have a lot of experience with that area. The deal is for a 178-room, 5-story Hampton Inn and Suites to replace his motel at 100 West Catella Avenue. So 100 West Catella Avenue, if you want to look it up on your Google Earth or whatever. The property will feature a modern contemporary design and a second-level pool deck, meeting rooms, and a fitness center. The article goes on to say that the Planning Commission approved the project in February, one of 3 hotel projects the Commission has given thumbs up to in as many months. In January, the Commission approved Element by Westin, a 174-room boutique hotel on Allrow Way at the former site of the Bergstrom's Children's Store and a city fire station. You can see that store from the 5, I know, when you're driving by. In March, the Commission gave the go-ahead for the public to have access to a rooftop bar called Fifth at the Grand Legacy Hotel across the street from Disneyland. Let's see. In the past 4 years, 18 hotels have opened, including 5 last year in the 1,100-acre resort area. 1 existing hotel is expanding. 4 more are slated that would be considered 4-diamond luxury properties. And as an aside, I don't know if those would still be going ahead because I believe that they were announced when the city had offered incentives and for luxury hotels, but I think that has subsequently changed. So I don't know. Nothing's concrete until after it's already built. But anyway, the article goes on to say the 75 or so hotels in the resort district generated $163 million in revenue for the city, of which $70 million went straight to the city's general fund. The hotel demand is being fed by a record number of people visiting Anaheim, which of course is home to Disneyland, the largest convention center on the West Coast, the Angels, and the Anaheim Ducks. A preliminary report by Visit Anaheim, the city's tourism marketing arm, reported more than 23 million visitors visited Anaheim last year. I think all of them were at the intersection close to my house. It was the 4th year in a row the city recorded growth. Wow. So the article goes on to finish up with the 110-room Arena Inn was built in 1975. The motel closed earlier this year, and it's slated to be demolished next month. Wow. You know, the resort district has existed now for what, like 17, 18 years, and it continues to be developed. You know, it continues to be improved and plussed. And yeah, I mean, there's, you know, you might like some of the charm of the old way of doing it, but there's got to be people who are impressed. You know, they've been they haven't visited in a while, and you come back and it's like, wow, you know, look at this buildup.
Wow.
Yeah.
Just a year, you'll be gone a year, and I mean, that intersection at Catella Harbor, there's stuff going up all around there.
Yeah, I mean, you would think that's got to be a primo intersection there.
Oh yeah.
So, and speaking of hotels, the official Disney Parks blog, it does report that they are reimagining Disney's Grand California Hotel and Spa at the resort, saying that this is the most extensive refurbishment since its opening, that Walt Disney Imagineering has developed an impressive plan that not only elevates the premium hotel experience, but also brings a modern approach to the arts and crafts design style. The hotel-wide refresh will include reimagining all guest rooms, pool areas, and the concierge-level craftsman's club, as well as new furniture for the lobby. And, of course, because that place was a dump, wasn't it?
It was falling apart. No.
You ever had the chance to stay there?
I did, yeah.
Oh, okay, lucky you're probably still paying that off.
No, I'm rich.
The guest rooms will be completely redesigned to create a fresh sense of luxury. Every single element will be new, from the floors and the walls to the furnishings, beddings, and linens, as well as upgraded bathrooms, which I think some people were saying they weren't going to have. I noticed the comments on the blog that they weren't going to have bathtubs or something. So I don't know about that, because people are saying this is family hotel and you're not going to have bathtubs, But upon entry, you'll notice hardwood flooring transition to soft, bright toned carpeting. The room decor is a contemporary take on the arts and crafts style, featuring all new furniture made of natural oak, specially designed for each room, as well as California-inspired artwork created by artists and Imagineers, including beautiful headboard walls with wood inlay designs featuring orange trees and Chip and Dale. Guests with a sharp eye will catch other uniquely Disney details throughout these newly refreshed rooms. So my guess is some hidden Mickeys. The multi-phase rollout is expected to be completed by the end of 2017. Wow, so there you go.
Wow.
Do you think it'll make it more expensive to stay there?
Yeah. If you
All right.
think you couldn't afford it now.
There's a report in the Orange County Register about how it says Disneyland project nudges Pizza Press. Pizza Press is the name of a place. It nudges it to a new site. The chain is also adding 300 restaurants. But the part that's relevant to our audience is that the flagship restaurant is at 1534 South Harbor Boulevard. And it's going to have to vacate because it is part of the Disneyland's Eastern Gateway project over there. The proposal calls for a 7-story parking structure and a 174-foot-long pedestrian bridge hovering over harbor and leading into the theme park. Disney secured the space when it acquired the Carousel Inn and Suites in 2015. Pizza Press is part of that property. Now, it goes on to say later in the article that before the owner could lose too much sleep, opportunity came knocking. His former landlord, Good Hope International, owns the Anaheim Plaza Hotel and Suites, less than 2 blocks away on Harbor. The developer and the owner, Malecki, struck a deal to move Pizza Press into the hotel, which is undergoing a major overhaul. The 2,700 square foot restaurant facing Harbor Boulevard is twice the size of the original location. It will have a large patio, plenty of parking, 80 seats, and 26 beer and wine taps. So,
they need to redo that hotel.
Yeah, that's there you go.
It's
but
okay, yeah.
Yeah, the original Pizza Press location will remain open through April 3rd. So, if you ever if you like going to that place while visiting the resort, you have until April 3rd, 2017 to go check it out. It's actually interesting because they're gonna have the new location will be open March 24th, so they're gonna have an overlap. So they'll have 2 locations open for a while, which I think is nice. Yeah. So speaking of food, there was Robert Niles had a column for the Orange County Register asking, are Disneyland and Knott's making food and wine festivals permanent additions to the theme parks? So you can check that out. he explains that, if you've, he starts out by saying, as you probably could tell if you've visited a theme park recently, parks in Southern California and Central Florida no longer believe in anything called the off-season.
Yeah.
So the parks that stay open year-round are looking to keep their parks as filled on a random day in March as they are in the heat of summer. So he goes on to explain that food and wine festivals are part of that whole process. So the Disneyland California Adventure Food and Wine Festival is back at the Disneyland Resort, and the Knott's Berry Farm neighbor, not too far away, is bringing back its Boysenberry Festival starting April 1st, no fooling. And it's expanding it to 23 days this year. Even SeaWorld in San Diego has its Seven Seas Craft Beer and Food Festival on weekends in April, too. So, interesting stuff. So if this spring break wasn't enough, they've got food and wine festivals.
I guess these are popular. I didn't really.
Yeah, I'm not too interested in them, but apparently a lot of people must be. Some people seem to get excited. MiceChat.com reports on the Food and Wine Festival at California Adventure, and they point out that it returned last year after a lengthy absence. The folks seemed to really enjoy the revived festival, but were turned off by the high prices and small portions. After visiting the festival this year, it's clear that those concerns were heard. Wow, so you can read more about that. We'll link to it in our show notes, as we do for all of these stories, on our website at www.thesweepspot.com. There's also an official Disney Park story that the TVN Group flag signals arrival of Collector's Fortress at Disney California Adventure Park. So that's, what's been replacing Tower of Terror. And this blurb reports that mysterious forces are converging upon DCA as the Collector's arrival is imminent. Throughout the coming months, changes are underway as Tenalier Tivan, the Collector, prepares to welcome guests to view the newest acquisitions in his extensive collection, the Guardians of the Galaxy. They report that the ride is still scheduled to be, the ride is it's Guardians of the Galaxy Mission Breakout that opens May 27th. They're hoping. I think they could probably pull it off, because I think if they're not changing the ride system at all, then it really should function well. Some of the special effects might have trouble, I think, but they could probably pull it off. And we will also have a Marvel Land news at the MiceChat.com link. So they actually have some great pictures of scaffolding and tarps coming off of Tower, what had been the Tower of Terror.
Yeah.
So check that out. They also, the official Disney Parks blog had some Star Wars Land info with some video. So there's an update into that, and it says in their official blog here, we're excited to share an update today on the progress of Star Wars themed lands being created at Walt Disney World and Disneyland Resort. As you may know, these two new immersive lands will transport guests to a never before seen planet, a remote trading port, and one of the last stops before wild space, where Star Wars characters and their stories come to life, and where guests will find themselves in the middle of the action. Of course, that really doesn't explain anything, but they go on to get a little bit more detailed when they say we're also creating two incredible new signature attractions. One that lets guests take the controls of Millennium Falcon on a customized secret mission, and an epic Star Wars adventure that puts guests in the middle of a climactic battle between the First Order and the Resistance. Well, okay, we could, piloting the Millennium Falcon gives you some idea, but the second description, it's just like, well, what does that mean? Because that can be, a live show, or it can be anything. But so they do have a video, and MiceChat.com also has a couple of Star Wars Land news updates. So we'll have links to those And MiceChat.com also had a Disneyland photo and rumor update, including major Fantasmic and Halloween changes. So they went on to say in this update that all tarps and construction equipment were recently removed from Tom Sawyer Island to facilitate nighttime rehearsals for the new version of Fantasmic. Right off the bat, we'll assure you that the show looks beautiful. The new projections are amazing, crisp, and have never looked better. The show also appears to have a new title. Instead of Fantasmic, it's now Fantasmic. It's got 2 exclamation points.
Oh no, they're
yes, they're going. They must like how we pronounce Mission Breakout. Yeah. So they're adding 2 exclamation points to it. And here I remember when the show was going to be called Imagination. But anyway, it's now Fantasmic. The 2 exclamation points indicating Fantasmic 2.0. The big change in the show is replacement of the Peter Pan scene with a Pirates of the Caribbean scene. The Lion King segment now replaces Kaa, the snake, but the scene still transitions into the traditional monkey scene everybody loves. There's also a new Aladdin section of the show. For the princess scene, Ariel will now be featured with legs and not in her fin. Belle remains still in her normal spot. However, a very top secret third princess will replace Snow White.
What?
Top secret. So what are they talking? Are they talking Princess Leia here?
No.
I mean, that would be kind of out of place. But then again, so is Star Wars Land.
I think Frozen or something. Or she wasn't a princess, though, right? Or I don't know.
Yeah, she was.
I never saw the movie.
Frozen would make complete sense. Can you imagine what they could do with that in the show?
Oh yeah.
Anyway, we'll see. Let it go, Lynn. Let it go. Much of the musical score seems to have been updated. While the music is familiar, the show now has much more of a pop beat to it. Oh my goodness!
No.
What's wrong with orchestra music? Anyway. Pardon me.
Wow.
They also said that Disney recently changed their policy regarding the saving of seats for electrical parade and fireworks. The new rule prevents guests from saving spots until after the ropes go up. However, they don't seem to be doing a very good job of enforcing the policy. Only guests attempting to put down blankets early have been stopped for now. Or perhaps they are already finding the new policy too hard to enforce. Wow, what do you think about this stuff, Lynn?
I was going to talk about...
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to...
No. I wanted to mention something about this. It's funny that that they're just now enforcing this. Remember when we'd work there and I'd leave, we would leave at 4:30, something like that. Sometimes 5:30, and I'd see people as I'm leaving New Orleans Locker putting down tarps, like 20 by 20 feet, in front of the river. So
yeah, and that was, the first show would be at 9:00.
That was, 10 years ago. So I don't know. Yeah, that's funny. But for like the parade, how do you know if someone's just sitting there like eating their ice cream or if they're waiting for the parade? So maybe that's the problem they're having with them.
Yeah, what are you going to do? Walk up to them and say, "Sorry, you can't sit down here." I mean, it's too early to sit down here. What are you talking about? I'm just sitting on the curb. No.
Maybe they walk up and ask if it.
Yeah. Are you sitting here to watch the parade, or are you sitting here to eat your ice cream? I'm sitting here to watch the parade. Get up! Get out of here!
Shoo!
They'll just make everybody will have to get a fast pass, or something. Sorry, you got to close your eyes. You can't watch this parade without a fast pass.
I think it's good, and I could see why some people wouldn't like it, but. I mean, if you're going to create something so good and popular that people have to wait 5 hours, then you have to.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, I knew people who would put out a tarp for Fantasmic, but they would typically, like 10 minutes or maybe even half an hour before the show, they would find someone who clearly looked lost and like from out of town, and they were desperately looking for a spot to watch the show, and they would invite them to go join them on the tarp. They got a big kick out of doing that, making somebody's day by giving them a really good spot for the show.
We couldn't even sweep there. I mean, there's
No, you just, the area gets eaten up by the crowd just spreading out tarps, and, you can't sweep it. And
anyways, well,
so,
we'll see how that goes.
There's, of course, MiceChat.com also has its typical updates about Disneyland, and there's one about how, pirates prepare to return with expanded offerings, and we'll get to that in a second here.
Yeah.
But they also say all signs point to MaxPass. An increasing number of attractions are getting MaxPass scanners. In addition, Disney has rolled out an update of the Disneyland app to Android users, which mimics the look of the Florida version. It should roll out to iPhone soon. Cast members have been trying to scan paper fast passes on some attractions, but the resulting lines cause them to just start collecting tickets as before. They'll either get better at this, or they could just scan those using the app and simply collect the paper fast passes as before. They'll figure it out. They always do.
Yeah.
So, remains to be seen how that works out,
Yeah, we can't say much until we see the... so that's the Max Pass is the one we talked about a while back that you have to pay. It was like $10 or something.
Something like that, yeah. I'm sure the price won't go up or anything like that,
Or
maybe annual.
Yeah. Well, it might come with the annual pass. Like if annual pass, I don't know. They don't know yet, but... all right. We will find out more on that.
And the Register noted that the Pirates of the Caribbean ride reopens at Disneyland in time for its 50th anniversary. Now, this was from a March 16th article. It says that Pirates reopened Thursday morning, which was March 16th, just in time for the golden anniversary. On Saturday, March 18th, which is when this podcast will be released, the iconic ride, the last one personally overseen by Walt Disney, will celebrate its 50th anniversary. Disneyland is honoring the anniversary with some special food and merchandise items. Topping the food list are golden churros. For those seeking treasure in their food, it is a churro with a lighter golden color, dusting of cinnamon sugar. As long as it's still fattening, it's good.
Yeah.
Around New Orleans Square, where the ride is located, they will be selling the Jolly Roger Punch. That will also come for an extra price in a limited edition souvenir Pirates of the Caribbean Stein. But right after that, it says, update. There were reports that Disneyland ran out of Steins by 11:30 a.m.
Wow.
Yeah, so people are really going after those specialized cups at the resort, apparently.
Of course.
Check for them on eBay, I guess. Or when you come visit us at D23. There are also pirate-themed meals, including a Caribbean-themed breakfast burrito, lemon-flavored beignets, and a Calypso Caribbean chicken. Disney officials say these items will be offered only for a limited time. In addition, on Saturday, there will be some extra entertainment near the entrance of the ride. I don't know how close to the entrance of the ride, because there will probably be lots of queue area there.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so we'll also have a link to the official Disney Parks blog mention of all that. And again, that's all of that stuff will be linked in our show notes on our website. So you can check out the rest of these stories for yourself.
Cool.
So,
all right. Well,
yeah, speaking of pirates, I'm looking forward to getting to that, but we got some other stuff to talk about first.
Yes, we have. We've asked our listeners to submit questions. We always have, but recently I thought it would be a good idea that if a listener has a question about anything, we will answer it on the show. So we're going to do that. We have one this week written by Spencer, and he says, "Howdy, I was unable to get this question in for the big 200th episode, but I'm still curious. I haven't finished the book yet, so maybe it's in there. but I was wondering, with all your time spent in the parks, what might be some amateur Imagineering ideas you've had? Were there any really significant ideas that really stand out in your memory, wishing you could implement? Small scale, whole lands, improving something, any answers appropriate, thanks.
No, not at all.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Well, Lynn, I could talk for hours on this. Do you want to say anything?
Well, I was going to say we could probably do a whole episode on this topic, but
yes, we could.
I know that you have a lot of thoughts on
this. I was doing stuff like that since well before I became a cast member, and the reason I became a cast member really was to get an inside look at how things operated, how things got put together, and to get my foot in the door of the company, because I did want to become an Imagineer, and I actually went and formally studied theme park design. I created my own major, actually, at Cal State Fullerton. And I did some formal and informal studies, and I did intern for a design company that was pretty large at the time, and to this day, I've got a lot of close friends, but never landed an ongoing job in the industry. But so working there, I would constantly come up with stuff. A lot of the stuff I would still not share, but the thing about armchair Imagineering is that there's a certain Imagineer himself who would do a lot of that before he got hired by Imagineering, and he came up with something based on Disney intellectual property, and he was just starting at Imagineering, and somebody showed him like 12 other concepts based on the same idea, So they've probably thought about it already, whatever it is that you come up with. But it's still a lot of fun to do, and it's still a good exercise to do if you want to think about design or whatever. One of the things I would share is, I never thought that the California theme was a good idea for the second park, but I thought, what they should have done is they could have applied that theme to the whole idea of the hotels and downtown Disney, so that, because the California theme around, even a state as rich in culture as California, it's still kind of limiting for an entire park, but it would be great to theme a few hotels and a shopping district, So I thought, they really should have built, you've seen the Grand Californian and how wonderful that is. But, if they would have had a hotel that's kind of themed to the glamour days of Hollywood, or the Hollywood that never really was, that would have been something. Maybe even a hotel themed to winery or, a ranch or something. I mean, and of course you can always do a beach thing, which they kind of did with Paradise Pier Hotel. But they could have. I just, when they were talking about doing that, and now, and I think I've said before to other people, I don't mind saying it here, the third gate, I still think they ought to go ahead with a Westcott project. But there's a concept out there that's been toyed with for so many years, because there used to be a model on display at the park for Discovery Bay, and I thought you could do a Westcott, and you could do a theme of Discovery Bay as kind of the unifying theme to it, is to explain why you have this exhibition that is got all of this culture from around the world, as well as this look at where we've been and where we're going as humanity. There's just really, we could do a separate show on this sort of thing, really.
Yeah, we may do that. I know one idea that I thought they should have done, because I'm a big Country Bear Jamboree fan. I thought, well, they want to put Winnie the Pooh in so bad, and I don't know if it was that they wanted it in. I think they wanted Country Bear out more than they wanted Pooh in. But I thought they should have put Pooh over in the Big Thunder Ranch area, because it's close to Fantasyland enough to be considered alongside some of the other dark rides, and but still be in the right theme of the kind of wilderness area. But that obviously didn't happen, and probably would have been kicked out now with Star Wars Land. So
yeah, it's always interesting to think about, if this had happened, then this couldn't have happened, or something like that, and
yeah, I mean, Tomorrowland's a place that we've talked a lot about in the past on this show, that there's plenty of great ideas that I've heard, for that, and we talked about those as I was working there. I remember talking about different. I can't remember exactly. I wish I remembered everything that I did when I worked there, because I have some amazing stories.
Well, you already put some amazing stories in the book.
Oh, I'd have more amazing stories.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Is there anything else you'd like to share about that, or?
Sure.
I mean, on?
Well, no. I mean,
you didn't really answer this question too much, but
well, there's I mean, there's a lot of stuff that I thought up of when I was working there over the years, and that's, you just wonder what you should say.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. Yeah,
because it's just kind of like, these discussions can go on forever.
Yeah, like you said, they're fun to talk about, and you can look at attractions that maybe aren't as popular as they were at one time, and you could easily say, oh, this could be that, or we could even just theming of attractions to rethink something and not completely change it.
Well, something that gets, I think, it's probably underutilized is the Aladdin's Oasis area. And, there's a portion in Walt Disney World at the Magic Kingdom. Their Jungle Cruise actually has a section that goes into kind of a cave. And for the years now, I've thought, well, why don't they kind of extend the property of where Aladdin's Oasis is? You can build something over part of the Jungle Cruise there, and you create sort of an interior finale for the Jungle Cruise. And then you can do something, I don't know, if you want to do another restaurant or something that, with the extra space, because it now extending over the Jungle Cruise, you had to have a little bit more space over there. I mean, it would take some work, but it could be done. And then you could have another show there, or an attraction, or just have a really nice restaurant again.
Right. And I think, and we've mentioned a few of our ideas, in the past. I had always thought that a third gate would be good for Star Wars and not where it's going now, but that's a subject we've talked about a lot. But in California Adventure is interesting because of the direction they chose to go, and kind of the direction it's heading now is kind of a mishmash. It's starting to become that, but hopefully they'll get something nailed down. And I like the idea that they have going on with the entrance, but I just think that they lose it a little bit in some of the other areas. But anyhow, that's and it's not the end of this question, because I think that this is something we'll definitely come back to again in the future and talk more about, and maybe even with some guests on our show that have a little more insight also. But thank you so much, Spencer, for send us a question, and if you have a question like Spencer did, send us. It could be on anything, our time working at Disneyland, what we think about certain things going on, anything you have. So we'd love to talk about it. So thank you again. But before we get into our main subject for tonight, we're going to have a little update from our sponsor, Michael from Concierge. He's going to give us a little update about 180 seconds going around the world with Disney news.
Thanks, Ken and Lynn, and once again, welcome everyone to the Disney 180, where we'll catch you up on all the things going on in the rest of the Disney universe, and we'll do it in 180 seconds. This week's update is all about the adventure, so let's jump right in. While we know there are 4 great theme parks at Disney World, what some people don't know is it's also home to 2 exciting water parks, Blizzard Beach and Typhoon Lagoon. One of those parks, Typhoon Lagoon, just opened a new family rafting attraction called Misadventure Falls. The ride begins with an aquatic conveyor belt that takes your circular raft up to the top and shoots you into action. You have to hold on tight as twists and turns splash you down through the falls, but keep your eyes peeled for precious artifacts from around the world collected by the ride's owner, Captain Mary Oceaneer, a seafaring treasure hunter whose ship was stranded on Typhoon Lagoon years ago. With the ability to fit a family of 4 in one raft and no height requirement, this is sure to be fun for adults and kids of all ages. And it's here right in time for the warm weather. For the first time this summer, Disney Cruise Line will be taking passengers to Alaska's Icy Strait Point as part of a new 7- and 9-night itineraries on the Disney Wonder. In the native village of Hoonah, Icy Strait Point offers a cultural experience which includes sightseeing complete with a retelling of the village's history through an interpretive song and dance. Other options include wildlife explorations and even kayak adventures. Departing from Vancouver, British Columbia, the voyages also visit such cities as Ketchikan, Juneau, Skagway, and Tracy Arm Fjord, which will give travelers the ultimate Alaskan cruise experience. Adventures by Disney has announced new themed river cruises for 2018. Specifically, a Beauty and the Beast themed experience on the Rhine River sailings. This trip will have guests feeling like they stepped into Belle's hometown when they visit the idyllic French village of Ricoire. Special themed dinners as well as other unique culinary experiences inspired by the film are also included. For those self-described foodies listening in today, Disney has doubled the number of adult-exclusive food and wine-themed sailings along the Rhine in 2018, offering 2 Epicurean sailings during the fall. Guests will enjoy extraordinary food and beverage experiences on and off the ship, which is comprised of wine tasting, gourmet demonstrations and workshops, culinary walking tours in several ports, a French pastries class, local beer and wine pairings, craft cocktail blending seminars, and more. I tell you, the foodie in me right now is amped up, and there is so many amazing opportunities to explore with Adventures by Disney all over the world. I highly recommend you check them out. And before we finish up, a brand new trailer for the next Disney Pixar movie, Coco, was just released earlier this week. Coco is the only solo novel film for the studio over the next few years as work ramps up on Cars 3, The Incredibles 2, and Toy Story 4. The story is centered around the Mexican holiday Dia de los Muertos, or the Day of the Dead, and looks amazing. While it's not a musical, it is rumored to be packed with music. It should be an excellent family film, and we're looking forward to its release in November. And that wraps up your Disney 180. Come join in on the conversation and stay up to date on the latest news from around the Disney universe by following both the Sweep Spot and us, their official travel planners, Concierge, on our Facebook page. Thanks for the time, and back to you, Ken and Lynn.
Thank you, Michael. And people should really go check out their website, concierge.com. Concierge.com, that's CONCIEARS.com. Kind of like mouse ears, concierge.com. That is the place to go for your Disney vacation plans. These people really know Disney. They love Disney. They're our sponsors, and so they're good friends of the show here. But if you want to plan a trip to Disneyland, Walt Disney World, Aulani, which is out there in Hawaii, Adventures by Disney, or the Disney Cruise Line, these are the people to check with because they keep up to date on everything that's going on. So even if you are a seasoned Disney enthusiast, which you might be if you're listening to this podcast, you can benefit from checking in with these guys. Plus, if you mention that you heard this on the Sweep Spot, let them know that we sent you, and you can get a copy of Cleaning the Kingdom, our book, for mentioning this podcast if you book with them. So go ahead and contact them at concierge.com and let us know how you enjoy your experience. The sooner you contact them and you're planning, the better, because they can really help you set up a good situation. So go ahead and give them a check. And thank you very much to them. And we're going to continue on with the show now.
Now there's new fun and excitement waiting for you at Disneyland. The opening of the Magic Kingdom's most exciting new attraction, Pirates of the Caribbean.
Yo-ho, pirates like for me.
Join the fun and excitement of Disneyland's newest and greatest attraction, an entirely new kind of family entertainment. Pirates of the Caribbean, an audio animatronic experience you'll never forget. See it now at Disneyland. Pirates of the Caribbean.
Okay, we're going to welcome back another guest to our show. I shouldn't say back, but our first time on our show. And he is a former Disneyland Attractions cast member, Disney theme park fan, creative director at Midsummer Scream, and founder of Theme Park Adventure website and magazine. Welcome, Rick West, to our show.
Hey, guys. Thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah.
Well, it's about time we got him on here.
Dude, it is. I figured I was gonna. There was a good shot I was gonna die before you had me on as a guest.
Well,
so
then it would have been more interesting that way.
It would have been a lot shorter. I'll tell you that.
And quieter.
Yes.
So, as we record this, we're the day before Pirates' 50th anniversary.
Yo ho.
Yeah. So you were a cast member and you had the chance to work on Pirates of the Caribbean at Disneyland, right?
I did. You know, I not only the chance, I had the privilege and honor of working on Pirates, which I considered to be the greatest attraction ever designed and built. And so it was really funny when I hired into Disneyland. They back in the day, they used to ask, and I worked there in the late 80s, they used to interview people 3 at a time, and because, that's not nerve-wracking. Right. And the lady asked me, she goes, she asked all of us, she said, if you could do anything in the park, what would you do? And one guy was like, well, I don't know. And then the other guy said, ma'am, anything I can do, anything absolutely. I just want to get my foot in the door here. This is a wonderful organization. So you can put me in the parking lot. I don't care anything. I will do anything. And she said, okay. And she looked at me and she said, what would you like to do? And I said, I would love to work at Pirates of the Caribbean and Haunted Mansion. And she kind of was like, wow, okay, well, that was pretty focused. And the two guys kind of like laughed, like, oh, that's a weird answer, whatever. But it was something that I had grown up with. And you know what? And I was 18 and I thought that would be really rad to do that. And long story short, the one guy that was like, ooh, he never got called back. The guy that said anything to get my foot in the door, he ended up in the parking lot. And I was trained very shortly thereafter as a Pirates of the Caribbean cast member.
Awesome. What year was that?
That was 1988.
Cool.
And you could tell by the use of the term "rad." It would have been if it had been earlier, it would have been bitchin'.
Or even earlier, it would have been far out, man.
That's right, far out, man.
So
which attraction were you trained on first, then?
I was trained on Pirates first. I was trained on Pirates by a gentleman named William Simpson. And if you guys have listeners that are Dr. Demento fans, that's Whimsical Will on the Dr. Demento show. And it was really weird because it was a 2-day training process, and it was really weird. I didn't put, even though I grew up listening to Demento, I never put 2 and 2 together, and I thought it was such a strange thing that, like, we would be outside at Pirates, and people were coming up to him saying, "Are you Whimsical?" And he would be like, "Well, yes, I am." And they would, like, ask for, like, autographs, like, in their autograph book. And I'm like, well, what the hell? I guess I better get a cool name like that, too, because, you know, people are going to come up and want my autograph, too. It didn't work that way. I didn't realize he was a radio personality. But so yeah, my trainer was William Simpson, and boy, that was an amazing training period there.
So you were already a Disneyland fan at that point. So when you were able to work on Pirates and see it up close, and probably took a tour of it, you were just blown away, I imagine.
So what happened was, back in the day, they used to. I say back in the day a lot, like, get off my lawn, because I don't think they do this. It was a 2-day training process back then, and it was kind of the same training process that a dear friend and mentor of mine, Van France, had created for Disney decades before, and you know, they told us in orientation that we were going to become cast members, and we were going to kind of go on the other side of the looking glass, and that the magic was going to, you know, be ruined because we were going to know how everything was done. Well, when I first started working at Pirates and got to, you know, go behind the scenes and below the scenes where the giant cam units for, you know, the auctioneer were, and all these things, you know, something just switched on, and it was a big switch on, and it dawned on me, no, this is the magic. And I developed a voracious appetite for just learning anything and everything I could about, you know, how the attractions were designed, how they worked, and everything. And it was something that was very beyond interesting. I mean, it really became like an obsession, not in a creeper way, but it really became an obsession of mine to learn as much as I could about not only Pirates, but then Mansion, when I was trained on Mansion, and all the attractions at the park. I mean, I would go on my days off, and I would go to different areas where I didn't work, and I would just hang out and talk to the cast members and ask every question that I could about why they would do this and how do they do this on their attractions and that type of thing. So it was a big learning process, but you know, to answer your question in a very long-winded fashion, the magic really began when I was trained at Pirates.
Yeah, I agree that for even, you know, in Custodio we had a chance to get up and see things up close, and I thought it would ruin the magic, but it didn't. It enhanced it. Like, it just made me more curious on how they did this, and a lot of it surprised me on how low tech some of it was. But I don't mean that in a bad way. But you know,
well, sure,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, absolutely. Pirates and Mansion both were built on '60s technology, right? Mm-hmm. And so, even though there are some new-ish effects in there now, the bulk of it is still '60s technology.
Yeah, for sure. So let's talk a little bit about Pirates and let's talk about the attraction itself and why you think it's so important and why everyone still loves it.
You bet. Well, you know, I think that Walt Disney's great strength, beyond obviously being, you know, the visionary, his great strength was assembling teams of artists and designers that really could take the ball and run with it. And Walt assembled probably the finest group of Imagineers that have ever been assembled, you know, for an attraction design project when he put together the Pirates team. And, you know, you had Imagineers that arguably, and this is in no way, there's no disrespect meant to any current Imagineers, but these guys, you know, these guys, the original WED guys, you know, were the ones that the industry kind of we all stand on their shoulders now. Mm-hmm. These guys rolled up their sleeves. They didn't have a vendor book that they could order boats out of. They didn't have a vendor that would come in and do their rock work. They didn't have Garner Holt to call to create the auctioneer or anything like that. These guys just rolled up their sleeves and said, "You bet, Walt." And they got to work, and they just did it, man. And so the fact that they created an attraction that is the size and just the sheer scope and scale of Pirates of the Caribbean at Disneyland, number one, you just don't see attractions like that anymore, right? I mean, no. we struggle these days, and when I say we, I mean when I'm not doing Pirates and when I'm not doing TPA and Midsummer and all this stuff, I'm a show writer, full-time show writer at Rethink Leisure and Entertainment in Burbank. So I actually work in the industry. It's a struggle for any of us to design an attraction that's more than 3.5-4 minutes these days. So, I mean, if you were to come to a project team and say, well, guess what? We're gonna do a 20-minute ride. That's unheard of. That just doesn't happen now. And to do something really, if we were to replicate Pirates of the Caribbean at Disneyland as it is today with modern technology and everything, you're talking that would be a $500 million ride. So it just it's an anomaly. It's an anomaly, and it's a beautiful anomaly that has lasted. It is more than withstood the test of time. It's spawned a multi-billion-dollar franchise, a film franchise, and it's gone on to be replicated at most of the Disney theme parks around the world. And God, what a long-standing tribute to, the people behind Pirates, and of course Walt's vision for putting that group of people together.
Yeah, I mean, people like Mark Davis, Alice Davis, Claude Coates.
You bet, the best, right?
Because you wrote. You did a lot of research into the attraction subsequently too to put together what is more like it's called Theme Park Adventure Magazine.
Yeah, we called it a feature issue at the time. Yeah. But it's a book. It's 170 pages. It's to this day is the biggest document that's ever been written on the attraction, and I published that. I want to say in 1997. It's been 20 years since I published that, and we self-published it. It was self-published before self-publishing was a thing, and that was a really weird thing too, because back in the day, there weren't many theme park sites, and there certainly weren't blogs, and there certainly weren't podcasts or anything like that. So I had a friendship with Mark Davis. I'm not Mark Davis, not yet anyway. I had a friendship with Marty Sklar and Tony Baxter back then, and I had mentioned to Marty that I wanted to do this feature issue on Pirates of the Caribbean. And he said, well, tell you what, why don't you we'll pick a week, and you can come down and spend 5 days at the IRC, which is the Imagineering Research Center, and we'll pull out all of our files that we have on Pirates of the Caribbean, and you can go through everything, all the pictures, all the slides and everything, all the documents, and anything that you want to use for your project, you just put a sticky note on, and we will make a copy of for you. Could you imagine that happening today? Oh, hell no. That doesn't even happen for other departments within the company. So it was such a weird... just being in the right place at the right time, because there's just no way that would happen today. And I did that, and as a result, we ended up publishing tons of pictures that had never seen the light of day, that WDI didn't even know that they had. Wow. The book, by all means, the book is not perfect at all, but it is. People still to this day will say, hey, this is like my favorite thing ever, from Pirates, and I love this, and it's cool to bump into people that have copies of it. Lynn, you said you have a copy of it, yeah?
Yeah, I'm very lucky to have one, and it's not like a normal book, history. It's a bunch of interviews from...
there are interviews, yeah. What I didn't want to just write I didn't want to write just a history book. So what I did was, of course, there's an introduction that I wrote talking about, the legacy of pirates. And then I go into what I did was I 20 years ago, I did this. It's basically show writing. And I didn't even know that, I was doing it then, but I just wanted to give the reader an idea of the attraction first person. So I wrote as vividly as I could the entire attraction using the script from the ride. And that's how I use that as a buffer between the different interviews. And when I say interviews, the interviews are pretty beefy. I've got interviews in there with Marty Sklar, Tony Baxter, Bob Beranek, and Mark and Alice Davis. And Mark and Alice that interview is 25 pages. So it's a big thing, and it was the last thing that Mark ever did as far as interviews regarding pirates before he passed away. And so that's a very special, special fact about the book. And so it's a weird, and then I go on to tell my own cast member tales, at the end. Some of them are off color, some of them aren't. But people went nuts for it. Mm-hmm. And like I said, to this day, people refer to it all the time. Jason Sorrell, when he was doing his Pirates of the Caribbean book, actually contacted me to ask if he could use some pictures from my book to put in the book that the company was doing, which I thought was really weird because it's like that's your that's your proprietary, that's your intellectual property, right? Why are you asking me? Yeah. But he did, and he was very kind. I think he thanked me like 3 times. If you look in the Pirates book, I'm like thanked in there ad nauseum, which is very nice of Jason. I really appreciated that. Yeah. So 20 years later, it stands as the definitive booklet on Pirates of the Caribbean. And also one of the weird sections, I call it weird, one of the more odd sections in the book, in the middle, it changes font style, and I used an old typewriter font, and I did this all, by the way, for you computer geeks out there. I did this on my shiny new Amiga 2000 computer back in the day. And
I think they have those in the Smithsonian now.
Probably at least cave paintings of them. And so what I did is I found a typewriter font, and I actually replicated verbatim the original Disneyland press release kit for Pirates of the Caribbean. So in the middle of the Pirates book, it has all these they're like big blocky images, pirates. It's almost like line art, really heavy line art stuff of the pirates, and the actual press releases as they went out to the media. I replicated that, so everybody that has the book has a copy of basically the Pirates press release.
I think the interview with Mark and Alice is amazing. How did that become?
So I had only met Mark once before that, and it was less than spectacular. He was doing a signing at the gallery up above Pirates, and I waited in line forever. I forget what even it was that he was. It was an assembly line. It was a bunch of animators signing something, but Mark was up there, and so I waited for. Oh my God, it felt like forever. I waited and waited and waited. Finally got to Mark. Alice, I think, was standing or sitting behind Mark, helping him kind of do things, and it came time for me to say hi to Mark. And I just looked at him and I said, I think you're great. And he just didn't even look up. And he goes, thanks. And I'm like, okay, that sucked so bad. I had nothing intelligent to say to him. And it was like, next. And so I figured, oh my God, that's gonna be my legacy with Mark Davis. But that was not. What happened was when I decided I was going to do this book, I decided very early on. I mean, when you go into a project like this, there are certain things that you know that if you cannot get these things, you really don't have the legs to do said project. And very early on, I thought, I cannot do a book on Pirates of the Caribbean without having Mark and Alice involved. I didn't have access to them. It's not like you just, you can't just like open a phone book and find all the Disney Legends phone numbers there or anything like that. A great friend of mine who is a great Imagineer to this day, Chris Merritt, was mentored by Mark. And he had a really good relationship with Mark and Alice. In fact, Chris is doing a book right now on Mark Davis, which is going to be phenomenal. And he offered to give me their phone number. So, of course, I said yes, and, I cold called Mark and Alice Davis, and it was the most unnerving, phone call I've ever made, and Alice answered, and, I kind of rambled and stumbled through who I was and what I was doing to complete and utter silence on the other end of the phone, and, that's always reassuring, and I finally just said, look, I composed myself, and I said, look, I can't imagine doing this without you guys. In fact, I will not do this without you guys. And there was an ungodly long pause, and Alice said, all right, we'll do it. Wow. And that was that. And that turned into me going to spend time with them. And I believe the one afternoon that I really sat down with Mark and interviewed for the book was, I want to say I spent about 3 to 5 hours with him, talking with him about things. And Mark, God bless him, because everything that he said was golden. He was, he was on a lot of medication, and he was, he was not young at that point, and it was kind of a difficult interview, because at times I had to rein him in, because he'd start talking about something, but then he would kind of detour a little bit and start talking about another story that lasted 15 minutes or whatever, and right. God knows you don't want to, you're not going to interrupt the man. No. So it was challenging just to keep him on the straight and narrow about pirates. And Alice, of course, is not a wallflower. She's not shy about her opinions about things, and that's why we love her to pieces. And so she certainly chimed in as well, and so I ended up calling the interview "The Captain and His First Mate."
Did you ever, when you were working the attraction, did you ever have the closeout duty where you would, if the attraction if the park closed before midnight, what they would do is they would cycle the boats for custodial day crew to. Well, if it closed after midnight, night crew would do it. But either way, they needed a ride operator to cycle the boats to be cleaned right after the park closed. Did you ever end up being the one to do that?
You bet I did. In fact, custodial would come in, back in the day when there's that back in the day again. That there's your title of the podcast. Back in the day with Rick West.
Love it.
Custodial would come in, when we had seasons and there were like more employees than there were guests in the park. This is way pre-Fantasmic, so the West Side was dead at night. And sometimes well before closing, if we had nobody there, Custodial would hang out on the dock, and they would already start doing it so that they could get out as soon as they could too. So you bet we would bring the boats up, and we would leave them in the station as long as Custodial needed to clean out each and every boat. And we had a lot of boats. I think I want to say we had 45, 50 boats on at a time. I think that's the number. It was a lot that we had on, so it was no small task. But usually 1 or 2 custodial folks would be there, and we would just cycle the boats and let them do their thing. Yeah, I did that a lot.
So when you were working there, did you? You were, like I was saying, you were a big fan. When you had the chance to, really see up close, was there anything that surprised you or that you discovered you didn't know before?
Oh, God, I didn't know anything, before. You grow up going on these attractions, but you don't, even though they're part of our DNA, as pop culture and as fans, boy, you don't know these things at all until you so for the 2 days of training, one of the biggest parts of training was what William called cat and mouse. And he would say, all right, I want you to go to, there is a phone below the burning city scene. I want you to go there and call me when you get there. And the one thing that's really weird about Pirates, the way that it's built, you can't get there from here. In a lot of cases, it is a virtual maze underneath and behind the scenes at Pirates. And so that's why Pirates is such an intense training, because you have to know where you're going in this attraction. And it is so easy to get turned around. So we spend a lot of time playing cat and mouse. I would say, okay, I'm here. And they, okay, go to boat storage. And I would do that. Okay, now go to the trans tunnel. And you had to know, number one, what he was talking about, and then you had to find your way. And this is while the attractions were operating, so you can't just like walk out and walk alongside the flume or anything like that. You had to use, your smarts and get there. And so, oh my God, it's a whole different. I mean, it is. You think the attraction is big as a guest? Wait until you have to walk around inside the attraction. It is massive. There were certain things that I did inside Pirates that were really cool. Like there's the very top of the fort that overlooks the sea battle scene, the fort bombardment scene. You're really freaking high up there, and there's a little tiny ladder that takes you all the way to the very top of the fort. And just going up there and looking down and seeing the boats cycling through there with 50 people per boat, going through, that's a pretty awesome moment to take that in. And from up there, you can look over and you can see the rest of the burning city. I mean, you can see a big chunk of that. So Pirates is made up of two buildings. The first building where the caves are, and then you go through the trans tunnel, which is short for transition tunnel, into the second building, and that's where all the big scenes, like that's where you come out into the sea battle and the fort bombardment, and then the pillage and plunder section, and then the burning city, and then the up ramp brings you back up to grade. But no, I mean, you can see a lot from the top of the fort, and you just at that point you just kind of look and go, God, this is pretty amazing. This is really a living, breathing thing, and I'm just a little tiny speck on this thing. That's a pretty amazing moment. And also just when you're sitting at talk about daunting but awesome at the same time, is when you're sitting at the controls of this attraction. You're responsible for so many people at once going through this ride, that working in the tower is really, really cool. That's just, you're in the power seat up there, and you have to be, it's been a long time since I've been up to the tower. I'm sure it's probably still pretty much the same, but you have to really be on your game. You have to watch the monitors to make sure that nobody's getting out of the boats or doing anything they're not supposed to be doing. And you control how many boats are coming up the up ramp. You don't want to have more than, 2 or 3 at the most coming up the up ramp. You want to make sure that your horseshoe, your approach is not all backed up, coming into the station. So you got to really be watching and knowing what you're doing. And that's a really cool rush, It's like, oh my God, I'm actually operating the most famous, awesome attraction in the world. So that was a really cool moment too, as a cast member.
I think what Disney does best at some of this is what you're talking about when you can see the different scenes, but really it feels a lot bigger when you're on the attraction because you're going through these different scenes, but really it is a big show building, but you know what I mean? But they're
massive. I mean, the two show buildings are really big, and obviously, to back up, it wasn't supposed to be that big. I mean, it was going to be a walkthrough. Right. It was going to be a walkthrough wax museum called Blue Bayou, and it was going to be walking through the caves and little vignettes and scenes like that. Mark Davis did a map of the whole thing that's actually in the book. The walkthrough map is in the book, and. Walt did the World's Fair, and he got squirreled by the whole small world notion of, oh my God, we can move a lot of people through this thing if they're in boats, And so he came back and told the team, guess what? Rip up what we've done, keep what you can. We're going to add on to this, and this is going to be a boat ride. I remember Mark, we didn't really talk about it, I don't think, in the interview, but plenty of times, while I was working on this, Mark said, oh my God, we all thought he was just nuts. We thought he was, what the hell is he doing? And so it was funny knowing that the team was like, what on earth, But God, I think that 50 years later, we can say that Walt's instinct was right.
Yeah, I don't know if it would still be there if it ended up being a walkthrough today.
I don't think so, man. I don't think so. I think that, it would have been a done deal. It would be something else now, right? Mm-hmm. But it's kind of weird to think of a world without pirates, right? In a world without pirates.
In a world without pirates. Right. How does Johnny Depp's career go?
It wouldn't, right? I mean, that would be it. He'd have Willy Wonka. That would be it.
Now,
it was. Yeah, I mean, working pirates, you really get you really appreciate how big and how massive this thing is. As a guest, it's a big ride, But boy, man, when you gotta know that building and that attraction like the back of your hand, it is massive and it's beautiful. You stand there thinking, God, this was built so long. I mean, Pirates opened before I was born. Pirates opened, in '67. I was born in '70. So it's just so weird knowing, oh my God, it opened and it pretty much looked just like this before I was even born. And that's just such a trip, right? Because it's not only big physically in size, just the whole legacy is so big. It's almost daunting of Pirates.
And not too many changes have happened since then. I mean, there's been some, but not as many as you would think for 50 years.
It's gone through, the first big change it went through was the PC change. And that was something that I covered in the book because that was the new hot thing at the time. But when I wrote the book, they hadn't, the franchise wasn't even, a thing. And that wasn't even a twinkle in the sky when I wrote the book, really. And so, then it spawned a franchise. And the thing that's great, in fact, I was just talking to Bob Baranek about, we had dinner the other night. And I was just talking to him about this because we were talking about Pirates at 50. And I said, the cool thing is all the changes that have done for the most part, and especially the ones that have been done, to mirror the film franchise, they're not, they're not irreversible. So when the day comes that, Pirates isn't like the coolest, hottest movie franchise IP, they could revert Pirates back. And it really is kind of unscathed, which is pretty amazing that it's been fairly unscathed for the past 50 years.
Yeah, that's true. Think of it that way.
There aren't many attractions that there aren't really many attractions that are as old as Pirates, but the ones that are, they've been so, they've been changed big time. Even Jungle Cruise has undergone so much change. That's one of the oldest attractions in the park, but all these older attractions really have kind of evolved with the park, whereas Pirates is pretty much the same way as it was on opening day.
Yeah.
When you were working there, it was still the original park management.
It was a weird. Yeah, it was a weird.
People like Ron Dominguez and stuff like that.
Yeah, Ron was there. It was a weird transition because, I came in '88, and the big strike of it was '84 was the strike.
Correct. Yes.
It was a weird transition period because there were still old timers. We called them old timers there that had been there for a long time, for decades. Some of them since the beginning. And there were a lot of, younger kids working there, but we had a really cool crossover. It was a really cool crossover of old guard meeting young guard, and an interesting time because there were a lot of old managers there. There was some new management coming in. There were still a lot of people that were very bitter about the strike, and people that know about the big strike, and it was brutal, and it ruined friendships and relationships. It was a big deal. And so there was a lot of that still going on in the park. I don't want to work with her. I won't work with that person. And of course, I missed all that. I mean, I was in high school when that was going on. I was in high school and a long way away from Disneyland. So I had no idea that there had even been a strike until I came and that, it was all explained to me. But yeah, just working in the 80s at Disneyland, it was an interesting time because it was a weird mix of old meeting new. And let's definitely get into that. But you know what? Before we do that, can I drop a special piratey nugget on you guys?
Yes, please.
Of course.
This is the first I've talked about it anywhere. So you guys are going to drop this first, and then I'm going to talk about it on TPA this weekend. I was approached a couple months ago by Theme Park Press. They contacted me out of the blue and said, we understand that you did this book on pirates in the 90s. I said, yeah, 20 years ago, a lifetime ago. And long story short, we've signed a contract and we are going to do Pirates 2.0. And that book is going to be a reprinting of this Pirates book that's been updated. And it's going to come out in December. still in time for Pirates' 50th anniversary. And I'm taking everything that was in the Pirates book. I'm going to re-edit some of the things. I'm going to include all of the original interviews, and for some of them, if not all of them, but for some of them, I'm going to actually end cap them. I'm going to go back. I'm going to, sit with people like Alice Davis and Bob Beranek, and we're going to talk about, it's been 20 years since we did this interview. Let's add 20 years onto that and look at Pirates at 50. And I'm also then going to, of course, talk about the film franchise, and then, of course, we're going to talk about Shanghai Disneyland and the Pirates there. And so there you go. People that have always wanted their copy of Pirates, it's not exactly the same animal, but it's definitely the same DNA. So they're going to get Pirates 2.0 this December.
That's awesome.
This has been exclusive breaking news on the Sweep Spot podcast.
I've kept my mouth shut about it, and so there you guys are. You're the first to have it.
Wow, I better sell mine before this airs. Just kidding.
That's right. The price of those on eBay is going to plummet.
So when people, when you tell people you worked on at Disneyland, what are some of the stories, like funny or interesting, stories that you pull out?
Well, people always want to know if people do horrible things on attractions, and yes, they do.
Mm-hmm.
We clean up some of that stuff when we were.
Oh my God! Sweep Spot after dark. It's it's really funny because they don't exactly. There's not really a part in the training manual about that, and so my first shift was a closing shift on Pirates, and I was there, and it had slowed way down. People don't realize, but like pre-Fantasmic, you could be working Pirates and you would stand there on the dock or in your position in rotation, and it would be sometimes 20, 25 minutes before anybody would even come into the attraction.
Wow.
Well, especially Splash Mountain was not open at this point.
No,
the side is at night time, it's completely just dead.
There was nothing. I mean, and the only thing deader was Mansion. But you're welcome. But so it would give young couples plenty of opportunity to experience Pirates in an all new way. And my first shift, I was up in the tower actually, and I caught two people just going at it. And by going at it, I mean going at it in their very own Pirates boat. And I was horrified and amused, and I didn't know what to do. And so I called my lead. I called my lead up to the tower, and he will remain nameless. I'm going to protect the innocent. He came up to the tower and a very concerned look on his face. Just and I thought, oh my God, this is horrible. Oh my God, what's going to happen? I'm sitting there sweating bullets, like all serious, like, well, what do we do? What do we do? And he's all rubbing his chin. So finally, at the bottom of the up ramp, he says, hey, can you put the brakes on? Because you can manually control the boats coming up the up ramp out of the arsenal. And I said, sure. And so I figured he was going to call security or whatever. He leans across me and he pulls the gooseneck microphone over, mashes down on the PA. You can. There's a PA where you can either address the entire attraction or you can send your voice to different scenes in the ride. And he mashed down on the button for the arsenal, and he said, "Yahoo! Ride 'em, cowboy!" That couple froze in mid movement. That couple froze, and they looked mortified, and the guy started grinning, and the girl looked like she just wanted to die. And they came up back to the station, and very often when people would come up to the station, we would applaud for them, or sometimes we would hold up scorecards for them, because what are they going to do, complain?
Right.
Hey, we were having sex on the ride and they clap. What are they going to do, right?
Right.
So that was the fun that we would have late nights at Pirates. So that was my very first shift. So yes, that does happen. Every attraction has its stories, and that's definitely one of the more interesting things that people always ask about.
I was able to join in on that applaud plotting, one time I was cleaning the queue late at night, and the Pirates cast member said, "Hey, come over here," and telling me what was going on and what's going to happen, and it was pretty funny.
That's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Pretty crazy stuff.
Well, back then you didn't have as many. People didn't expect as many surveillance cameras everywhere.
Yeah,
you didn't have smartphones, and you didn't. You wasn't like GoPros were around. So, for an attraction to have that many cameras was unusual. People didn't expect it.
One of the favorite lines that we would use is we would get on the PA and we would say, "Folks, just a reminder, this is a family park, not a park for making families. Thank you." And that usually that usually took care of the situation really fast. And it usually always was the guy grinning like the cat that ate the canary and the girl looking mortified. So that was something that happened very often. Both Pirates and Mansion, that happened, that kind of thing happened a lot.
I know that at one point, didn't they have like lookouts like in the attraction?
So Pirates, we would have Pirates had monitors. Pirates had monitors when I hired in, and the only time that we would station ourselves inside the attraction would be on grad night. On grad night, there were different places. One was at the top of the first drop, and another place was actually in the trans tunnel, which is now where the the projection, the waterfall is that you go through, the mist screen.
Oh yeah.
There would be chairs there too, and you would stay there because those were spots where people would tend to get out, and so and then also in the Burning City, those were spots where we would station live people to make sure that usually in broad sight of people, so they would know we're watching you. That was the only time that I knew that they were in there. And, here's a funny story too. I was in, cause you had a rotation for that too, but, grad night was long. You were there like in the wee hours of the morning, and oh my God, I was so tired, and I was positioned in the trans tunnel, and it's so dark in there, and everything just becomes white noise. And my eyes got so heavy, so very heavy, so heavy, and I just nodded off. And suddenly, my lead, her name was Karen, she was up in the tower. One of the kids, I don't know, a boat had some kids that were being jerkies or whatever in it. She came over that PA in the trans tunnel so loud and said, "You need to sit down in the boat, please." I fell backwards out of my chair. It was so loud and startled me so hard. I jolted and I fell backwards out of my chair. So that was my awesome grad night story from Pirates.
Did you have anything, Ken?
Well, you did mention Mansion too. Well, I guess we can throw in a little bit about that. You ended up working both attractions.
Yeah, I guess we can talk about the Mansion. That little attraction. Mansion, Mansion was a great attraction to work. To put it in perspective for your listeners, I hired into the Mansion before the hearse was out in front of the Mansion, and Critter Country, Bear Country had just closed, and they were building Splash Mountain next door when I was a cast member. So I would stand out on the foyer of the Mansion and actually could see them working on Splash over the green construction wall. That was the era that I worked Mansion, and well, what do you say? It was everything that you would imagine it would be and much more, working the Haunted Mansion, because much like Pirates, you go below the track, you go behind the scenes in the attraction, and you really learn this thing. And it's just mind-blowing to be able to see how Yale Gracie put all these different illusions together, right? And all this. Yeah. So it was again, phenomenal. Now, Mansion did not have monitors. Mansion didn't have cameras. Pirates did. Mansion did not. Instead,
Mansion subsequently got them, but
yeah,
not back then.
Yeah, now they do. Every attraction does now, but back then they didn't. They had not put them in, and so I was. There was a position called safety, And I was safety position. I loved it because you didn't have to deal with anybody, really. You would go and spend your entire shift walking around the inside of the attraction behind the doom buggies, making sure that people weren't getting out or they weren't smoking or doing anything that they shouldn't be doing. So basically, you were acting as security inside the attraction for your entire 8-hour shift. So I would go in there, I would take my lunch in there with me, and I would just vanish for 8 hours. And it was such that, like, unless there was a problem and I stopped the ride and called for security or anything like that, most people didn't even know that I was in rotation that day. They didn't even know I was part, of the crew that day until I came walking down out of the darkness. And they're like, oh, my God, we didn't even know you were here. And I did that a lot. I worked that position. That was my favorite position that I ever worked at Disney. And so working safety was fantastic. And like I said, they have the monitors now. They don't have that position anymore, so cast members don't get that chance to spend, 8 hours a day plus inside the guts of the Haunted Mansion.
Cal OSHA probably wouldn't allow it at this point, working around the operating ride system,
My God,
now
coming down through the cemetery. Really, where they wanted us most of the time was from the endless hallway to the exit of the attic, because once the doom buggies came down out of the attic, as they go through the cemetery, they turn and they swivel quite a bit, and you're supposed to stay out of view of guests. So you were jumping back and forth and making sure you were behind these things. And I'm telling you, a few times you would get too close to the doom buggies and they would swivel. Oh my God, it would catch your foot and it would catch your ankle underneath the vehicle and just rip all the skin off the back of your heel. That happened to me a few times, and you could feel yourself bleeding through your socks. Oh. No, I'm sure probably OSHA wouldn't be too into that these days.
Wow. So how long were you there working at Disneyland?
I was there short. I have so many stories that you'd think I was there for years, and I was there probably about, 2 years. Mm-hmm. It was very, very short, because what happened was we used to have the Christmas parties, and what would happen is people from the studio and from Imagineering would come down and they would work an attraction alongside the attraction cast members. And so it was just a way for, kind of, not really networking, but bonding with people from Burbank and Glendale, come down, and they got to have a night of fun working the attractions and learning how the attractions worked. And I met a guy by the name of Scott Wolf, and he worked at Disney TV Animation at the time. And he just, we hit it off. And he was my buddy one night on Mansion. And really long story short, I left Disneyland and I transferred to work with him up at the studio at TV Animation on the Disney Afternoon on Tailspin. And so that kind of brought my Disneyland portion of my career to an abrupt and very, I guess, premature or quick stop, I guess.
And so
they tend not to do those parties anymore, and I'm blaming you. I think it's your fault, but no.
What isn't really? But the company's just too big, right? It's way too big,
right? And the holiday season is too crowded and too long, and so they don't do it because the company's too big and it's just too complicated now.
And they can charge people a lot of money to come in for private Christmas parties. Forget the employees from Burbank and Glendale. The public will pay to come in and do private parties. So that's again a very special era, long gone, that I'm really, really honored that I was part of.
Well,
did you have any encounters as a cast member with people like Ron Dominguez or Jack Lindquist or Cora or any of those?
You know what? No. The answer to that is really no. My big freak out.
That means you stayed out of trouble.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, no, not me. I had my whole laundry list of problems with my immediate supervisors and all that, but we don't even need to get into that. But no, I really the only, and I guess it's not even management, but the only kind of brush I had with that was once Splash opened. once Splash opened, a friend of mine was working, and he said, "Hey, do you want to see the tower? You know, the control tower?" And I said, "Sure." And or you know what? I'm sorry, it had not opened yet. They were cycling. They were cycling logs, and they were getting close to opening. And he said, "Hey, you want to come up and see the tower?" I said, "Sure." As soon as I get off work, so there I go in my mansion costume over to Splash, and he opened the door. And the Splash Tower is weird. The door is a long way from the control panel. You open it, and you've got like, you know, it's been a long time. You got like, I don't know, 7 feet or so from the door to the panel, if not further, that overlooks, you know, the station. And we walked in, and it's dark in there, and there was nothing in there because it, like I said, it was just under construction and being built. But there was a guy at the controls working the attraction, and I turned around and left right away. And my friend came out, and he said, "Well, dude, I thought you wanted to see the tower." I said, "Yeah, just not right now." He said, "Why?" I said, "Because you know who that is working the controls?" And he said, "No." I said, "That's Tony Baxter." And he said, "Who's that?" I said, "This is his ride." He goes, "He's a lead?" I said, "No, you don't understand. This is his ride. This is his dealio. He's the Imagineer." And it was Tony sitting in the tower there. And he said, "Well, why didn't you?" I said, "Look, you don't understand. This guy is like a celebrity to me. You know, he's already got a legacy with the company, and I don't want my first, you know, encounter with him." I was having flashbacks to having really bad moments with other people, you know, like, "I think you're great," you know, type of thing, right? And so I was like, I don't want to have that be my Tony Baxter moment, you know. And so I didn't know what to do. I panicked, and I turned around and left. So that's the only time I was ever up in the tower of Splash. But yeah, anyway, I derailed us. Sorry, I got squirreled with all these stories.
No, that's cool.
No, this is great stuff.
Watching Splash being built, and I know, Ken, Splash is very near and dear to you too. Watching one thing I'll tell you what was very cool was I was working a closing shift at Mansion one night, and I was asked to be part of, we called it Club 12 at the time, because that's really how many people could fit like in a log at Splash Mountain. And we were the first group. They called over to Mansion and said, "Hey, we need living crash test dummies to ride through Splash." And so I was part of, and it was kept very quiet. I was a group of 12 of us that went, and we all had to sign NDA. We signed our lives away, and we were the first group of people to ever ride Splash all the way through. And we did it probably 6 times from about midnight to about 6:30, 7 o'clock in the morning. And they would fill the reservoirs in Splash, and they would send us through, and they would jog us. It was called jogging us. They would jog us from zone to zone, and they had to go and manually release with a key so the log could continue. And very little of the inside of Splash was really done. They had a temp track playing on speakers that were running along the flume. There were some animatronics from America Sings and all that in place, but we couldn't tell what they were because they were covered and wrapped up in big black plastic bags to keep them safe from the construction and the water and all that. And we rode Splash. We were Club 12, and we were the first. And it was another very surreal moment, you know.
Yeah. So you were an original log, not the logs that the attraction opened with. Yeah.
They've gone through like 5 iterations over the years, right? So. The first logs were freaking huge. They were way too big. They banged the hell out of the flume as they were going around the corners and all that. And they went down Chickapin Hill, the big drop. They went down way, way too fast. And so I remember when he released us, he goes, "Okay, are you guys ready? Here you go." And we went down, and there was no show lighting on. It was dark going down into the briar patch. None of us knew it. And I remember that drop felt like it took forever as we were dropping down that thing. And when we hit the bottom, there were no lights on, really. There were maybe a couple work lights kind of here and there, but there was no show lighting again. Nothing. It's dark in there anyway, but it wasn't during the day, so you couldn't see what was going on. But in the dim light, there this huge wall of water just kind of in slow motion stood up in front of us and dumped like a cartoon over all of us. I mean, it flooded the whole thing. And that was our first ride. And so we had to spend, and this was in the winter. It was cold. It wasn't like summer night. It was not a balmy summer night. It was like in the winter we did this. We all had towels, and we were wrapped in like Splash Mountain towels and blankets they brought us. But we sat there the entire night completely wet, waiting to ride this thing over and over again.
Before we go, I wanted to talk about some stuff you have going on right now. I was looking at your website, and it looks like you have an event in July coming up.
Yeah, we do this little thing in Long Beach at the convention center called Midsummer Scream. And it is the West Coast premier Halloween haunt and horror convention. We debuted last year in Long Beach, and we're coming back bigger and better this year. It's July 29th and 30th, with a Saturday night party on the 29th being hosted at the Queen Mary, on the Queen Mary, by the Dark Harbor Group. And if you want to learn all about it, you want to get tickets, they're 50% off right now. Go to our website at midsummerscream.org, and all of the info is right there. We've got a massive show floor. The show floor is about 92,000 square feet. We've got over 200 vendors that are going to be there. We've got an area called the Hall of Shadows, which is about a football field sized section of the show floor that's all dark, and we have 14 mini haunted attractions in the Hall of Shadows this year. And so they're like little previews of haunts that you can find around the Southland come Halloween time. Cool. And we have the Decade Brigade slider team. They do a big slider demonstration 3 times a day in the Hall of Shadows. Then we have we have a museum. The Nightmare Gallery is a museum of odd, spooky things. We have shows by groups like Zombie Joe's Underground Theater. They're going to do Urban Death, a Midsummer Scream version of that. We have also world-class panels and presentations. We have big presentations by all the theme parks, Universal, Knott's, Magic Mountain, Dark Harbor. They all come out and they unveil and they talk about what they're going to be doing at Halloween. And so it's a big, big deal. And then we have education. We have seminars and workshops, some take and make things. Make and take things. And it is like people will say it's the Comic-Con of Halloween stuff. So if you're a Halloween fan, a horror fan or whatever, Midsummer Scream is absolutely for you. And we're also on social media. You can find us on Twitter and on Instagram and Facebook. It's all right there from the website.
Cool. Yeah, well, I'll put a link in our show notes for sure.
Cool. I appreciate that. And we want you guys got to come down and check it out too.
Yeah. I may have to.
See?
Lynn will be in town in mid-July, and I don't know if he can do both.
We'll see.
Both visits, but yeah.
Well, then he'll make you come, Ken.
Yeah, you have to report on it.
Yeah. Definitely a lot of Haunted Mansion stuff.
Oh, great.
Our vendors know that our fans love Haunted Mansion stuff, so you get Haunted Mansion cookies, Haunted Mansion outfits, all sorts, anything Haunted Mansion. That's a big seller, and vendors know that.
Awesome.
Well, heck, even our shirts that we've been selling for a while are kind of we have one of them that invokes the Haunted Mansion. So,
well, there you go.
There you go. Goes right along with our shirts, then, folks.
Nice.
Well, cool. Well, thanks a lot for coming on, Rick. I really appreciate it.
Well, it's been a pleasure. I thank you guys. I know you've been doing the show for a long time, and I'm glad that I finally got to get on with you guys. I've had a lot of fun talking to you, and I hope that, everybody hasn't fallen asleep or nodded off like I did in the Trans Tunnel on grad night. But I love talking about this stuff. It really is an era that it doesn't exist at Disneyland anymore, and I feel very, very lucky. That's really the word. I feel very lucky that I was able to be a cast member at that time. And
yes.
It's being a cast member today, I'm sure, is great, but I'm also sure that it is very, very different. And so I count my blessings, and I'm fortunate enough to have a medium, whether it's TPA or the Pirates book or whatever, where I can actually share slices like that, and for fans now to be able to go back and say, well, this is kind of how it was, back then, and it's what a treat to be able to carry that on at least and share that with people.
Awesome. And so you said the book will be out in December, so they can go to your website and check out info soon on that, or?
Yeah, well, we're going to publish. We'll publish a Pirates at 50, article, and I'm going to talk about the book in the article. There's not much to talk about at this point, except it's going to be an updated version of the thing that I did 20 years ago. And of course, when the time comes, you'll be able to get it at Theme Park Press or Amazon, or they're going to handle all the printing and distribution of it.
Okay.
So they're doing all the heavy. That's how he got me to say yes, because they're doing all the heavy lifting on it, right?
Yeah.
So when the time comes, if you're following TPA, whether it's at themeparkadventure.com or on all of, we're on social media at TPA Magazine. You can find us on Twitter and Periscope and all that. Believe me, everybody and their mother will know. And I'm sure I'll be making the rounds again on podcasts talking about the book and what we've added to it and that kind of thing. But yeah, so that if you want to keep updates on it or ask me things about it or whatever, contact me through the website or social media, sure. But it's definitely in the works. We're polishing it up, making it all purty and new. And if all goes according to our plan and contract, it'll be out in December.
Cool. Maybe we'll have you back around that time then.
Cool. And what a cool Christmas present that'll be for people.
I know.
Yay.
All right.
Well, thanks a lot, Rick.
Thank you guys. Thank you guys
so much.
Thank you.
Okay, well, that concludes episode 204 of the Sweet Spot Podcast.
Wow. I think I made it through barely. Because I was captivated, but yeah, I'm sorry again, folks, if I didn't sound like my normal self. So,
well, we want to thank Rick West for coming on the show and sharing so many of his great stories and information on just everything we talked about. It was really cool.
Oh yes, definitely.
Definitely need to have him on again sometime, and we will do that. And I want to also let you know that you can go over to our website, thesweepspot.com. You can get our book, you can get t-shirts, you can get links to our Facebook page. You can
definitely find us on Facebook, folks.
Check us
out. We're there, the Sweep Spot. We are there.
Yeah, we even have a page for Queen the Kingdom. So
we do. So spread the word about the podcast and the book. Let people know where they can find us, because they can find us in lots of great places.
Low plate, no. So I want to thank Russell for always doing stuff for our website, and Disney Chris for providing the background music I play every week on here. And I think that'll do it. But I want to thank you for listening. We really appreciate it. And if you have any questions or suggestions, please email us at thesweetspot@gmail.com or through the website. And also, if you want to leave an iTunes review, you can go over to iTunes. We'd really appreciate it. And we also, you can become a Patreon of the Sweet Spot and joining us through that. You can check it out on the website there. For Patreon, you get little rewards depending on what you give. So we really appreciate anything you give to us, and we use it to go right back into the show. So thank you so much, and thanks for listening.